Hello, good morning friends. In this video lecture, we discuss the menstrual cycle in human female. Menstrual cycle is nothing but the cyclic changes observed in the ovary and the wall of uterus of female primate. Female primate means monkey, ape and human being included. Whereas another cycle which is called estrus cycle, ESTRUS, estrus cycle has been observed into the non-primate females like cow, buffalo, tiger, etc. This cyclic changes normally repeated as at an average interval of 28 to 29 days, and in the mid of the cycle it releases one ovum by the process of ovulation. So this is the different stages or different changes occurs in the ovary during the menstrual cycle. So each each menstrual cycle has been divided into the three different phases. The first phase is menstruation phase, the second is the proliferative phase or follicular phase, third is the secretory or luteal phase. We try to understand the entire menstrual cycle by this figure. So menstrual phase, it starts from day 1 and it will end till day 5. So in this phase the bleeding takes place. The second phase is the proliferative phase. Here the oocytes, primary oocyte, develop into the secondary oocyte, into the tertiary and mature follicle finally. So it starts from the 6th day and by 14th day, and in the middle of the cycle, 14th day, ovulation takes place, right? So this is approximately 8th day here, right? Whereas the luteal phase, it starts from the 15th day and end by 28th day, right? This phase, luteal phase, is always fixed. It is 14 day in length, no matter what is the length of the menstrual cycle. Suppose in any female, the length of the menstrual cycle is 25 days, right? So this luteal phase is always fixed, as we know. So you subtract 14 days from the 25 days, so remaining is the 11 days. So in the 11 days only, the menstrual phase as well as the proliferative phase has to be completed, right? So normally they ask question that which day, suppose length of the menstrual cycle is 25 days, so which day the secondary oocyte release or ovulation takes place. So this phase is fixed, that's why this is the 11th day. So 11th day ovulation takes place. So always be careful in solving this kind of question, right? Okay, now the question comes how the menstrual cycle starts, so or how it is regulated. So as we know, the secondary follicle or development of primary to the secondary or tertiary follicle, the granulosa cells, they increase their number and they secrete estrogen, right? And this increasing or high level of estrogen, it stimulates the hypothalamus to secrete GnRH and anterior pituitary to secrete the LH. Okay, and this LH, it increases here to a very high extent, and this is called LH surge. ये LH surge कहलाता है. So due to this LH surge, the ovulation takes place, and this ovulation takes place at the 14th day. यदि हम 28 days की cycle ले रहे हैं तो, right? But Here, after the ovulation, this remnant part on the ovary, which is called corpus luteum, it secretes progesterone, and that progesterone, it gives a feedback inhibition to the hypothalamus, right, to secrete less amount of GnRH, so there is no LH and no follicular development further is there. Okay, so here you always keep in mind that granulosa cells, they increase estrogen, whereas the theca interna, it secretes progesterone. So when the ovulation takes place, almost no granulosa cells are remain there in the ovary now. Only the theca interna is there. That's why they secrete estrogen, and they inhibit the hypothalamus to secrete the GnRH. Right? Okay. Now we try to understand what is the real scenario in the ovary as well as in the uterus during the menstrual cycle. So we divided the entire menstrual cycle into three different phases: the bleeding phase or menstrual phase, then follicular phase and luteal phase. Now we discuss these phases in two different sub stages, I mean initial stage and terminal stage. In the bleeding phase or the menstrual phase, in the initial stage, the amount of GnRH is very low, hence the FSH and LH has also been low, right? So in the ovary, what happens? The complete degradation of the corpus luteum. We start from here. This is also first, right? So complete degradation of the corpus luteum takes place and it forms corpus albicans, right? Okay. But in the terminal stage, the GnRH increases. That's why the FSH and LH will also increase, right? And this FSH and LH, it triggers the primordial follicle, right? I mean, particularly the FSH, it triggers the primordial follicle to develop into the primary, secondary, tertiary, then mature follicle, right? So here the 6 to 12 primary follicles are stimulated to start the forming secondary follicle, right? And then it enters into the follicular phase. So now the follicular phase started. In the follicular phase, the concentration of GnRH has been increased, of course. So the FSH and LH has been increased, right? Due to the positive feedback of the estrogen, right? So here the second 1 to 2 secondary follicle has been developed from the 6 to 12 primary follicle, right? And then finally the only one tertiary follicle has been developed from those secondary follicles, right? Then it enters into the luteal phase, right? It enters into the luteal phase now. So in this luteal phase, the concentration of the estrogen is now low, right? That's why the GnRH, the amount of GnRH and LH is low, right? Whereas the amount of progesterone here is now measurably, that is good. So it inhibits the GnRH, right? So in the luteal phase, the GnRH, LH and FSH are comparatively low than the terminal stage of the follicular phase, right? So here the Graafian follicle will rupture, right? So once it ruptures, the secondary oocyte releases, right? And the remaining theca interna and theca externa and other structures, they form corpus luteum, okay? In corpus luteum, they secrete progesterone, right? And that progesterone it gives the feedback inhibition to completely stop the secretion of LH, right? GnRH by and then by the LH. If fertilization takes place, then this corpus luteum remains as it is. It increases in size and increase in the formation of progesterone, right? And it maintains the pregnancy till 9 months. But second condition is that when the fertilization won't be there, then it regresses themselves to form the corpus albicans, right? So this is the scenario in the ovary. And the second changes it occurs in the ovary is the thickening. First in the menstrual phase, it the ovary, uterus, the uterus wall, it degenerates and bleeding takes place, right? And in the proliferative phase, it started becomes thick, right? The secretory cells are much more evolved over there. And in the last phase, that is the luteal phase, the uterus becomes thick and it provides the proper condition for the implantation of the fertilized ovum, right? So here they are asking, so which day the the wall of the uterus is most thickened and which day the corpus luteum has been biggest in size, so that we get the answer from this slide. So this figure is very, very informative. So this figure shows the things in 4 different panel. This is the first panel, second panel, third panel and fourth panel. In the first panel, it is the level of FSH and LH. So we can see here the level of the FSH and LH, it is high at 13th day approximately, right? And in the ovary we can see the mature follicle, it is formed by the 12th day or 13th day, and the rupture of follicle, that means ovulation, takes place by the 14th day. And in the 21st day, or we can say the 22nd 21st day, the Graafian follicle is largest in size, whereas the thickness of the uterus wall is highest in the 23rd day, right? So you always keep in mind. Then third panel, it shows the ovarian hormone. So here the concentration of the estrogen is very, very high by the 12 or 13 days, because the granulosa cells are much more at that time only. Then the progesterone, because it is secreted by the corpus luteum, right? So its secretion is very, very high by the 21st or 22nd day, right? So that's how the ovarian hormone level has been shown. And fourth panel, it shows the level of the thickness of the uterus. So thickness of the uterus is highest by the 23rd day, right? Now this slide, it just shows you the everything in the written content, which what I discussed earlier, right? This is also the things which we discussed earlier. So by the age of 50 year, the genetic programming has been done in such a way so that they won't produce much more hormone in the female, and the menopause, that is end of the menstrual cycle, occurs in the female. So start of the menstrual cycle is menarche, right? It is 11-12 year we have start hoti hai, and menopause age is the 50 years approximately, right? So that's it. Thank you very much.